podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Hello, I'm your host, Les Bubka. Welcome to Anxious Black Belt, a podcast that focuses on karate, mental health, and everything in between. If you enjoy our content and would like to support us, best way to do that is to listen to another episode, share it with your friends, and leave us a review. All this stuff helps the mysterious algorithm to introduce our podcast to new audience. Thank you for joining me, and let's listen to the episode. Welcome again to Sound Bites from Karate for Mental Health. My guest, Peter Jones. You're doing Jiu-Jitsu mainly, right?
Primarily, yeah.
Primarily Jiu-Jitsu, dipping in Karate, Aikido, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, all-around person. And most importantly, a nurse, right? Peter done a great talk today about the safety and injury prevention, which I really enjoyed. And before we start talking, if you don't have his book on the injury prevention, go to Amazon and grab it. It's well worth it. Hi Peter, thank you for joining me.
No, thank you for inviting me today. Yeah.
Did you enjoy the session?
Yeah, yes, very much so, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for your talk. How much do you actually put from your work into the martial arts, and how did that change your view on it?
The two have run side by side. I got my first black belt in martial arts as I started my degree in nursing.
Okay.
So the two have run side by side. And as my personal martial arts have evolved, so has my understanding of human anatomy and also teaching physical development. So the two have really run in parallel. So how much? Yeah, they go hand in hand.
Yeah. So you've seen some horrendous stuff in your practice.
Sure.
Hopefully not so much in the dojos.
No, sure.
But what are the most kind of mistakes made by martial arts coaches on the floor that you could kind of improve their behavior, let's say, with all this stuff?
I think that there are two things. One is the club culture, and that's a mistake that I see, is there are people out there who take up martial arts with the intention of hurting people.
Yeah.
Or they take up martial arts to win medals without regard for their training partners. And really a good instructor needs to identify negative behaviours, negative attributes, and maybe sometimes that person just needs educating and they can be an asset to the club. Maybe that person isn't suited to martial arts.
Yeah.
So I think that's one thing, is making sure the club culture is in place, that we're all there to mutually improve, we're all there acknowledging that what we do is potentially dangerous, but we are acting in a way that we take responsibility for our own health, but crucially we take responsibility for our training partners' health. It is possible to get very good whilst being very safe.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think the other mistake that some people will make is not taking, we talk about every martial arts instructor does first aid, that's part and parcel of life and work, but not many people I think take the prevention aspect seriously in terms of your vetting of your students. And by vetting, I don't mean anything radical, I don't mean extensive interviews, I just mean things like, most clubs will have an application form where you give your emergency numbers and declare you're not a criminal and that sort of thing, and declare your specific health issues, and I don't think instructors take account of that. Or indeed just think about things like the training environment and the room you use, because of course some of us will use permanent dojo and some of us will use a little church hall, and they've all got their benefits and sometimes risks. Who was using the hall the night before, for example.
Yeah, I've got a lot in my other venue that coming in and there's cake on the floor and stuff, and you have to.
Or glass.
Yeah, it meant to be cleaned, but if you don't do it, people won't do it, and they won't do their good job.
Yeah.
So how long have you been doing martial arts now?
34 years.
Too long.
Yes. Yeah, I started in 1990 when I was 11.
What took you into the jiu-jitsu? Why jiu-jitsu is the
The
main
club opened. So back then, things are very different now. Of course, there's martial arts on every street corner. Every man and his uncle can teach martial arts, some better than others. But back then, so my first martial art was Lao Gar Kung Fu. You might say why? Because that was the club that was there. That was what our town had. Why did I take up jiu-jitsu? Because a club opened in the town I lived in. Why did I take up Aikido? Because a club opened right where I was living at university. In latter years, of course, I've sought out specific arts or specific instructors, but that's with the benefit of time, money, a car, a job, the internet, knowing where things are, knowing what things are. But back in 1990, it wasn't like that.
Cool. We've been talking about, let's go back to the kind of nursing and prevention. We've been talking about a few of students ask about the waivers, and you said that the waiver is really not worth anything if you don't do due diligence and take the safety seriously.
So I think most of us, when we have our application forms, will have some sort of disclaimer on there, and I do. And I think, although a student or a parent will sign it, I think it's more a case of you're making a statement to them, as in you need to acknowledge that any physical activity you do, and let's not confine this to martial arts, football, rugby, you'd be surprised how many injuries we get from fishing. Yeah, you wouldn't think it, but you'd be surprised. So any physical activity is going to carry a risk of injury. Now, that's not to say that you use the phrase due diligence. Absolutely. Just because we acknowledge that there is an inherent risk does not mean that you can't be negligent. You certainly can be. The example I gave this morning was if you mop the mats before training and the floors are wet and you don't put down wet floor signs, or you don't advise people, please just give it some time to dry, and somebody comes in and rolls their ankle, then they could say you're negligent, you didn't warn them of that hazard. And indeed, making sure people have got the right safety kit, making sure people are appropriate for the activity. So a person, regardless of a piece of paper, an instructor can very much still be negligent. And that's how legally it would work, is you would be sued for your negligence.
I was going to ask you as well, I forgot to ask you on your talk. You said that if people are insured, so my understanding of the insurance member to member is not for the activity, it is what everything happens around. So if I leave something a bag and they trip over, it doesn't protect students from being punched during sparring and accidentally losing the tooth. Okay. Or is my understanding wrong?
Okay, so there are a number of factors to this. So firstly, all insurance is not the same, and you need to check with your insurer or your insurance intermediary as to what insurance is in place and for what and why. So yes, you should have member-to-member insurance, and you should have insurance that will cover you for your own personal injuries. So for example, you talk about a tooth being knocked out, does your insurance cover dental fees? Does your insurance cover physiotherapy, for example? But what you also need is third-party insurance, because you need, and I'm talking about the instructors now, not students, but if you think about parents watching, if a parent trips over a piece of equipment or slips over the wet floor.
That's the public liability.
Yes, right? Exactly, yes. So you need that insurance in place as well. And in my experience, most, if not all, insurance providers will provide both. But again, it is down to the instructor to make sure they have got the correct insurance in place. And I think a lot of it, certainly when I started teaching, I was part of a big organisation and I just paid my insurance and got it and just accepted. And of course now I'm independent, I'm a lot more thorough and a lot more clear as to what it is that I'm getting, and thankfully I'm a part of the BCA now and they are excellent. But that is, advice that I would give to instructors is be sure of what organisation you're with, what insurance is being offered, what it covers, and what they expect. So as an example, as part of the Aikido that I do now, we do Iai-Jitsu, and the insurance explicitly states no live weapons. So whereas in the past you might do Iaido with a live blade katana, and now I've had to buy myself a dull blade. No, not Bokken, we still use katana, but for insurance it's got to be dull blade.
I think by law as well, isn't it?
I don't know. In honesty,
I keep seeing the arguments on online. Some people are kind of what do you call it? I lost the English words.
Sure. The law on weapons does keep changing in light of life events or world events, and without going into detail, I do wonder if we're about to face new laws on crossbow ownership, for example, because of a recent high-profile, very nasty case. So the law will keep changing. I'm not a lawyer. I'm a nurse, I'm not a lawyer. My understanding is if your insurance allows it, then yes, live blades could be brought into class legally, as long as there's justification of doing an appropriate art and used in an appropriate way. But again, please check with your solicitor or your insurance, not with the nurse.
Cool. Remember, guys, Peter's book is available on Amazon and through your website?
No, just on Amazon.
Just on Amazon.
Yeah.
Title?
It is Ninja Nurse, the essential guide to injury management in martial arts.
Go and grab it. Thank you very much, Peter.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Well done for listening to all of it. You are a superhero. Thank you very much for your support. And if you could leave us that review on a podcast platform, that would be amazing. I appreciate your time, appreciate your support, and I wish you all the best until the next one.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.